northern lights, the moon and every force of nature gifts the surface of the earth with energy. Mankind has had a sense of this all the way back to the Stone Age. I live in the Alaskan wilderness and recently learned of this powerful energy myself.
He has made one of the most significant health discoveries of all time.
One man rediscovered this secret that was to change my hometown forever. A grounding rod and a wire is all it took to personally test whether this was too good to be true. And if anyone takes off their shoes and connects to the earth, a profound change takes place immediately.
Everything's all interconnected.
Anecdotal evidence doesn't prove anything.
They call it earthing or grounding. Scientific testing occurs all over the world, and what happens to our blood cells is just the beginning. Earthing has the profound power to enable our bodies to become resilient to toxic food we eat, air we breathe, and water we drink. Even electrical pollution can lose its damaging sting if we are grounded. Physicists and medical doctors study the stream of data and scratch their heads in amazement.
That's the everyday Joe that's going to need this more than the guys that's got millions of dollars.
How much money do you have?
Zilch.
Has your back gotten better?
I have absolutely no pain in my back whatsoever.
And now long term, I don't have pain at all anymore.
I noticed that I was sleeping better. I had a deeper sleep.
I used to not be able to just reach up.
It transformed how local hotel operators did business, but then came the skeptics.
We understand that you've created a website called Skeptoid.com.
I can't say I've heard anyone say they have a health benefit.
I walked 30 feet today.
Penicillin was a revolution in medicine. This is a revolution in healthcare that transcends penicillin.
The Earth knew what the patients needed.
What are you here for? Business or pleasure?
Well, a little bit of both. I'm here to get together with some fellow colleagues of mine who are passionate about earthing.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
To help them be heart healthy.
It's just uncanny how fast people heal.
One of the most sensitive indicators of changes in the Earth's field environment is the human heart.
Top medical experts from around the world banded together to further the scientific research in an effort to revolutionize healthcare and save the environment in the process.
Why is everybody bare feet?
Why is everybody barefoot?
Well, you want to answer that one?
We need to be connected with the earth which gave us birth.
It's such a simple and so profound and powerful concept. And it's right there beneath our feet. If there is a message at all about earthing, it really is about our connection with nature, with the planet, with the universe.
Scientists can now see forms of this energy in the laboratory.
Earth's vibrational power can rearrange grains of sand, which suggests nothing in nature is random.
The world's greatest heroes are oftentimes visionaries, and for one Apollo astronaut, he was determined to learn more when he showed up at my doorstep.
Is this a wire that's connecting them?
Yeah, it's a wire and then there's a mesh, and it becomes really distinct over time. This poor little sunflower that's not connected starts to wither and wilt, and the one that's connected to the earth is still vibrant and strong. It seems to me when I look at this that the earth itself has this energy to give every living creature.
Well, it certainly would suggest that. Certainly would suggest that.
An Alaskan filmmaker is shooting a documentary right here in the upstate. It's about a concept even the filmmaker says is too good to be true.
Have you ever heard of grounding?
It's a healing concept filmmaker Steve Kroschel believes can change the world. This will be part of the sequel to Steve's documentary, Grounded, a documentary that was panned by critics who were skeptical. Steve says he's out to prove these critics wrong.
So y'all in town visiting?
You know, we're here to shoot this movie and basically tell the world about the medicinal benefits, which are absolutely huge.
All of my life, I've worked with wild animals, many of them orphaned. And in the course of this activity, I became a documentary filmmaker that tried to reveal truths about many animals that were long misunderstood. One of them was the wolverine. What scientists once thought about this animal's physical characteristics and personality has changed profoundly over time. And on this given day, a BBC film crew was shooting a segment with me, furthering that enlightenment. They are not vicious, cold-blooded killers. They are instead highly intelligent and playful creatures that prefer to live as far away from modern civilization's mess as possible. The film crew was shooting a cutting-edge documentary called Beyond Human and utilized my cabin as a home base. The wolverine's extremely refined sense of smell was what they wanted to highlight. Their olfactory ability is exceedingly beyond human, and we've barely scratched the surface with understanding what animals detect in their shrinking world. As humans, most of us have now lost our connection to nature, and now there is a word for it, NDD, Nature Deficit Disorder. And this incompleteness has taken a severe toll on our mental and physical well-being. This is where the story turns a page. I had a visitor who was from a different world, yet he was lucky. He was lucky because his father is a medical doctor, a heart specialist who could see something most of us could not. And because I had this visitor, another guest arrived, straight from California, who is the host of a radio show about human health. His name is Howard Straus. This is the guy who had Clint Ober, the rediscoverer of earthing or grounding, on his health broadcast a couple years ago that I had listened to. And because of that radio show, it changed my life in my hometown of Haines, Alaska, for good. He was here to do an on-location interview with my visitor, Step Sinatra, the son of cardiologist Dr. Steven Sinatra. I knew the interview would be challenging from the start because Step was starved for nature and didn't want to be in any one spot very long. I admit, it was nice to have some help with the firewood. Both of them were eager to have contact with the orphaned animals, including Angelica the moose, who wasn't feeling very good the past few days. They brought over some organic carrots to make friends with her. It was time for breakfast, and what was on the menu was a prescription straight from the pages of a book written by Dr. Max Gerson, an MD that succeeded in curing cancer almost 100 years ago with a famous cancer therapy, or rather infamous cancer therapy, depending on one's point of view, since the trick to its success is not drugs, but basically diet, which emphasizes juicing organic vegetables in a special way. Howard Straus is Gerson's grandson. I knew that Step Sinatra liked to connect to the earth with his bare feet as much as possible, and so do I, for that matter. Years ago, I realized that by this time no sane grizzly wanted to be, dare I say, barefoot in November. And the only option was to go into the earth where it was warm and comfortable. I fashioned an open-ended culvert into a den as well, for humans that is. It is here that Howard was able to continue his on-location interview for his radio show, The Power of Natural Healing.
You have attributed earthing to saving your life.
It kind of goes along my philosophy now, after all I've been through, that nature has a cure for everything. God talked to me. It was incredible. And God said something so simple, yet it was profound. And he said, do you want to be here?
And by be here, you mean on earth and alive?
Yes, exactly. I lived such a complex life. I chased after a lot of material type things, and it's like I said before, that was not the answer. It got me to the wrong place. So now I'm gravitating back towards nature, towards the laws of nature, towards the principles of Ayurvedic medicine, where nature is your healer and your teacher. Like I said before, nature has a cure for everything. And that's what I learned going through my entire healing journey. And I had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to see every specialist that was out there, or clinic, or therapy, whatever it was, because I had the resources. And all those led me to nothing. Still ill health. And really, the journey is that I had to go deep. I had to go within myself and realize that the healing is from above. As above, so below, is from the spiritual aspect, and I'm going to say God, and that's it. Whatever everybody else may think that may be, or it's all personal, but there is an intelligence that is beyond us, and connecting with that and feeling that love, that's healing, and that is nature.
Step Sinatra defines his previous life as one where the bottom line was all that mattered. He worked as a Wall Street trader, but he eventually also traded in his health inadvertently. But perhaps his illness ultimately became his greatest gift. When his father, cardiologist Stephen Sinatra, began a desperate search with Step for the cause of his lost health, he discovered a few key factors. The two main ones were that his diet lacked proper nutrition, and he walked around with cell phones, sometimes one on each ear, day in and day out. Many people are sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. To these people, devices that label the word smart as part of the product ID are anything but that. But Step's recovery did more than give him back his life. He had an epiphany, and it opened his heart and his mind.
Okay, so I'm in the hospital, and the main doctor walks in, and 8 other doctors in white coats surround my hospital bed. 10 minutes before that, I almost choked to death because I was so weak. I was 83 pounds. I could hardly breathe. The doctor says this, telling all the other doctors, he goes, this young man has a 1% chance of living through the night.
What, 1% chance?
Yes, and my family's in the room, or they're crying, and I said to myself at that moment, I go, oh my gosh, this was my worst fear. I can't believe I created this, because this was it. It was like I was in a movie, and I realized that I had created my worst fear. So the epiphany was this, in that a split second after that, I said, well, wow, if I created that, then I can create my wildest dreams.
There was a time not too long ago that I wanted to see with my own eyes the documented proof of his past. And it took me right to the doorstep of his mother, Susie. I was then led to reunite with Dr. Laura Koniver to independently evaluate his health profile. Step's health deterioration at society's current disregard for basic biological laws is not unique. In fact, some experts say the majority of us are now caught up in some kind of health crisis that is linked to environmental factors, whether we realize it or not. To live a healthy life doesn't mean one has to deprive themselves of tasty food and drink, and before Step and Howard left my cabin, we all experienced that fact. It's just that the wine should be made from grapes that aren't heavy laden with pesticides and chemicals, and the same goes all the way down the line, from the turkey to the potatoes. But if our diet is less than optimal, inflammation of the body can be a consequence, and yet earthing or grounding can still help put out the fire. Surely there must be a lot of people that stay at the Eagle's Nest Motel that don't eat right. Yet something is going on with them. Because now, all the rooms at the Eagle's Nest Motel are grounded because the public demanded it. Splitting firewood in the dark is asking for trouble, but from personal experience, the difference of having a broken body for a day as opposed to a week rests in connecting to the earth by way of a single wire connected to a grounding rod in the earth under a pile of snow. I can only imagine what the implications are if this ever catches on to what's possible. I recovered fast enough to follow Step Sinatra to Vancouver, where he was visiting his brother Drew and his family. This was a place to gain a broader perspective.
So what's he doing?
Step's routine in the morning. It's his way of grounding, it's his way of centering. He does a little bit of a Qigong exercise with his arms. You'll notice him doing that. And it's his way of really building energy. It's building Qi, it's building sustenance. And
he's barefoot and he's grounded.
He's barefoot, he's grounded. He loves it when he does it. If you ever try this particular exercise, you'll just kind of you'll feel sort of vibrant. You'll almost feel like an energy in your hands.
Step and Drew Sinatra know where to go barefoot in the city. Sidewalks made with cement are conductive and are like walking on the earth, whereas asphalt, which is what city streets and most highways are made of, has a chemical makeup which is non-conductive.
Step was holding onto the water faucet while shaving for a reason, because the pipes and water line are grounded. Even taking a bath takes on a whole new perspective. And when Drew and Step took me along to meet a patient at Drew's clinic, they introduced me to a meter they use, which to my amazement was able to read electromagnetic pollution emanating from power lines and cell phone towers, which clearly proved that it existed.
It was over a year ago, and I'd gone to see a girlfriend who was extremely sick, and I think I mentioned to you about her being, and all those doctors couldn't diagnose, so we took her for a walk in the wheelchair, and we went over the overpass into the sort of park area, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, you guys, is it raining? Like, is it raining knives?
You were directly underneath the power line, so yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Not everyone else felt that, but for me, it was like, I got to get out of here, because it hurt. It physically was hurting my skin.
Because most of current society is bathed 24/7 in this electrosmog, the best way to deal with this fact is through grounding and nutrition. In the case of this patient, she was receiving a vitamin cocktail intravenously. Just outside Vancouver in Victoria, British Columbia, I met up with Step and Drew's father, Dr. Stephen Sinatra. Although he was using a cell phone, he was also barefoot at the same time to counteract the effects. Dr. Sinatra was in Victoria to address the issues surrounding this subject.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Blank.
Hi, good afternoon.
And what are you going to be doing today here at this?
Well, there'll be a meeting, and a number of us will be discussing various aspects of the electromagnetic field pollution that's been pervading this country and then the world the last few years.
Well, most people don't believe that there's any danger. What do you say to that?
Well, they don't believe that because they don't feel it. But there are meters around that feel it, and there are small animals that feel it, and they let you know by not surviving.
Small animals, even insects?
Even insects.
Can you give an example?
Well, there was just a study I read actually a few days ago that was published in July from Greece, where somebody had the students raise fruit flies. Remember, fruit flies were the experimental animal which we started to learn about chromosomes and genes. Very famous experiments done in the fly room at Columbia University. But anyway, he did this having these flies exposed to different kinds of gadgets, all the different gadgets that we have now, maybe a dozen of them. And the fact of the matter is that it interfered with them. And many eggs did not survive. In fact, all of the exposed insect eggs were damaged compared to the controls. So you don't have to ask the insects. I mean, they tell you by just not surviving.
There are literally thousands of published independent studies worldwide that warn of reproductive abnormalities and DNA damage. Even cell phone manufacturers have warnings, but most people don't read the fine print that comes with these personal gadgets.
I do not own a cell phone for several reasons, one of which is that there is no reception where I live. And in making this documentary, it was becoming increasingly difficult to actually find a payphone. They are disappearing fast.
And so, society changes according to an economic plan, for better or for worse. And history has shown us that hindsight is 20/20. Personally, I look at EMFs as a kind of soft kill, but necessary, I guess. No one is going to throw out these electronic gadgets any more than we are going to stop driving cars because they burn poisons that obviously aren't healthy. Dr. David Suzuki gave me a better perspective.
We have come to think that our bottom line is determined by economics. Economics is a human-created entity. It's not some magic force of nature that suddenly comes upon us and we've got to bow down before it. But we've created the economy as if it's some kind of thing here that we're all here to service. The reality is we've forgotten that we are biological creatures.
And you are an electronic engineer, is that right?
Yes.
And you work in Silicon Valley?
Yes.
And I described to you what grounding is about, and what did you think of that?
I believe we need to see data.
Yes.
And if it is reproducible, and if there is data to back it up.
The only way that I'm able to leave Alaska for brief periods of time is because I can rely on one man, Rocky Seward. Rocky is another example of someone who suffered from health issues that melted away because of earthing. Now I tested one of those meters in my cabin and was relieved to see it read -65, which is the best reading one can have. The first documentary about grounding and how it helped the residents of my hometown was having its first premiere. The only problem was there was a snowstorm brewing.
This town is unique. People in this place are interested in doing something adventurous. Now you're an electrician, and some people say that earthing makes you sick, that if you go barefoot on the earth that there could be stray voltage and that it could make you sick. What do you say to that?
No, the earth is grounded. You're not grounded. If you can't get sick from that.
All right, now how long have you been an electrician?
50 years. My company is Hertz Electric.
And then there was Dave Orud, who not only recovered the ability to walk again, but recently had open heart surgery to repair a congenital heart defect. 2 years ago, the doctors and his family feared it would have killed him right on the operating table.
Once you look at the evidence there, do you see it?
Yeah.
And this, if you notice, is where I plug myself in every time I lay down.
What did the doctors say about this belt that you wear?
They were doctors. They didn't say anything positive or negative. Of course, I didn't plug myself in when I was in the hospital. But, you know, I think they hear all kinds of stories. He said, if you conquered what you did as a paraplegic, he said, you can conquer this too. And I had a beautiful wife and family. They helped me.
The doctors, are they surprised?
The last time I went up there, we had a checkup, and we went up last fall, and the doctor evaluated me, and he had nothing but a smile on his face. He said, that's a miracle.
No matter where I looked, people were transformed. Take my associate Mario Benassi, who works with birds of prey. His life dramatically changed, which of course also helped the snowy owl indirectly.
And what better way to celebrate than to play Santa Claus and deliver grounding resources to those that slipped on the ice or couldn't sleep or had a spouse that was desperate? The list of people runs off the page.
stop and think about it, Mother Nature, in her vast silence, speaks volumes to me sometimes. I see a beautiful energy when one directly connects to her that makes a human being's spirit soar. And this soul shine seems to manifest itself in all life, everywhere. Children from all over the country began to write me after hearing about how I would do tests with cut sunflowers in vases and ground one and not the other. For this young girl, the results were worth a ribbon. And it wasn't long before this idea of grounding plants branched out into our community with an herb that fuels scorn, hatred, confusion, but yet hope for many. For one resident of Haines, Alaska, he wouldn't let frozen ground deter him from a test he wanted to do with me. So he stuck a grounding rod in a tree and then ran a wire into his little garden in the house. We wanted to verify that the potted plants he selected for this trial were indeed grounded, and so we tested the connection from the tree with a separate ground from his water faucet. I stuck 2 flags in the potted plants that were grounded to see what would happen over 2 weeks and 3 days. One of the plants that was ungrounded in the back had a 7-day head start. Surely, as they all grew together, their leaves started to touch each other, giving the entire garden a boost of power. Even so, running a ruler across the tops of the whole garden verified the 2 grounded plants. Growing cannabis is legal in Alaska, and I've personally seen its astounding medicinal effects upon those sent home to die by allopathic medicine. It's the resin that does the trick when ingested by the walking dead that gives them their life back. I've personally followed these miracles through the work of Dr. Jeffrey Hergenrather, who demonstrates hope, health, and life every day. Grounding is part of nature's recipe for keeping us truly alive. We need to be grounded now more than ever because our present culture seems oblivious to basic biology in favor of short-sighted, unsustainable economic gain. I find it absolutely amazing that virtually all indigenous people clearly understood how connecting to the earth meant being truly alive. But presently, being grounded takes on a deeper significance.
Countless studies have proven that a diet filled with genetically modified food is not good for humans and creates inflammation. Grounding can help significantly, but if consumed in large amounts by a sensitive wild animal, a tipping point can be reached in which nothing can be done. After Marge the moose died in late fall, I discovered in research that a pellet that I was feeding Angelica and Karen as a supplement to wild browse contained genetically modified corn. I was tempted to continue feeding it till I looked into Karen's eyes. It was already too late for Angelica. How could I have done this? Was it really the genetically modified food called GMOs, or something else? I needed to be sure.
It would take me all the way to New York City to listen to one of the world's foremost authorities and researchers on the subject, Jeffrey Smith. I entered a lecture he was giving on this agricultural nightmare.
Roundup is now being sprayed on wheat, on barley, on rye, on potatoes, on citrus, on berries as a ripening agent. So if you're going to avoid GMOs, also switch to organic, because organic does not allow Roundup. These are testicles that changed from pink to blue in rats that were fed GM soy. If GMOs are causing these problems, why would we not see them? No one is looking. There's no post-marketing surveillance.
I related the moose tragedies to Jeffrey for his insights.
We've seen a lot of evidence of livestock and wild animals certainly avoiding GMOs when given a choice. So it'd be interesting to try that experiment, but also getting better when they are taken off of GMOs. We've heard a cattle feed operation showed a lower death rate when the GMO corn was removed. We've seen certain organ lesions in animals fed GMOs, whether in the farm or in the laboratory.
It was at this point that I started to introduce some good news in the middle of all this bad news. This wasn't Haines, Alaska anymore, but I discovered quickly that the people were no different. As fate would have it, the grounded movie that premiered in Haines was suddenly in the national spotlight, about to premiere in New York City, and Howard Straus was set to record another on-location radio segment for his health program. This time, he met with earthing advocate Dr. Laura Koniver and her 2 children for a segment in Central Park. Dr. Koniver homeschools her 2 children and utilizes these types of travels for homeschool lessons.
Earthing's it's the most ancient healing modality of all time, so it's the most easy for more patients to align with.
I've seen everything from weight loss to pain reduction to sleeping better. And I've had patients literally say they have a tree that's on their balcony that's, they can touch the branch of, but it's rooted in the ground below, but they're on a balcony. They sit there and read a book and touch that for 10 minutes, and it makes a difference in their life, so yeah.
Dr. Koniver went from one radio program to another with her message of healing.
All your free radicals, any kind of inflammatory things that you've got built up, is starting to wash it away now.
Before long, I had Howard helping me hand out crumpled paper bags of earthing resources to these city folk. It was déjà vu. While staying in the big city, I switched to a more civilized way to ground even myself at night. But first, I needed to check the grounding port in a wall socket to ensure the building was properly wired. Older buildings, before the 1970s, did not always have a good ground. For this reason, a grounding rod is often necessary. I was in luck. The wiring was updated in this old hotel. Now the Earth's energy could flow into the conductive fibers of the pad if my skin made contact.
So I had a conversation with Laura Koniver, and she said that she did a little mini study with her obesity patients. They were all women. 60% of them lost weight as she expected. 40% of them did not. But those 40%, when she looked into it more deeply, had more serious ailments. And the more serious ailments did clear. So in other words, the body took care of the most dangerous things first, the most life-threatening things first, leaving the obesity for later.
Howard was now recording Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who explains his experience with an earthing resource.
The best way to describe the way I felt is I felt extremely toxic and poisoned. I couldn't sleep at all. I felt irritable. I developed terrible itching.
I'm wondering, first of all, what kind of dwelling do you live in?
I live in a pre-World War II apartment, so it's no synthetics in it.
Dr. Gonzalez, thank you for joining us.
Howard, it's always great to see you, and it's always great to talk with you and have stimulating discussions.
It was the opening night of the theatrical release of the Grounded documentary, and Howard had yet another segment to record for his radio program with Step Sinatra's father, cardiologist Dr. Steven Sinatra in the projection room in the theater.
I've interviewed hundreds of people who have grounded, and not everybody has a pleasant experience.
Right.
I mean, first of all, people can have a detox reaction, where they're earthing and they're getting an energy through the body, and you know, this could activate parasites, maybe even live spirochete, activate microbes. But remember, even though they have a undesirable situation like leg cramps, for example, remember this, that when you do earth, when you do ground, you could be detoxing the body. So you're bringing the body to a level where it has to get a little bit worse before it gets better.
Even my assistant back home in Alaska, Rocky, was able to read the reactions from the film critics to the Grounded documentary. It wasn't pretty. The New York Times didn't pull punches. While considering the film critic feedback, an acquaintance who advocates earthing and grounding to a broad audience tried to cheer me up with yet another published scientific double-blind study. Yet, all I wanted to do was go home.
Hold that. Maybe take your things out of your ears so you can hear me. Do you feel better than you did 24 months ago, Rocky?
Yes.
Can you tell me what your last name is?
Seward.
Rocky Seward. Now, do you feel better? Are you richer than you were 24 months ago?
Nope.
What do you mean, nope? How much money do you got?
Zilch. Not a dollar to my name.
Well, you're rich in health now, right?
Yeah.
You don't look very happy.
Not financially, I'm not.
Well, maybe I can change that. I'm going to go on a trip.
Okay, when do you come back?
I'm not sure yet.
Hey.
You don't believe me, do you? There's people in New York that say they saw this movie and they thought it was a bunch of crap. Didn't believe it. What do you say to that?
Well, from experience, I know it works.
What?
Experience, I know it works. I had sleep apnea. I don't have it anymore.
Well, what about other people in this town?
There's quite a few people here that were sick and had back pain and etc., and they're all healed now.
But would film critics on the West Coast see the documentary with a different perspective?
Welcome back, folks. This is Howard Straus, The Power of Natural Healing. The guest is Dr. Gaetan Chevalier. Dr. Chevalier works, he is faculty at the California Institute for Human Studies. Now, California Institute of Human Studies, welcome.
Human Science. California Institute for Human Science.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chevalier. Here is a technology that is simple and basically free for anyone, and yet is one of the most powerful techniques for healing that has ever been identified.
I started doing research for earthing with Clint Ober in 2003, and it happened at the California Institute for Human Science. And well, at the time, I was very skeptical.
You were not an advocate.
That's right. But connecting to the ground is To my surprise, amazing results beyond what I expected, actually. The first study was an electrophysiology study. So we measure brain waves, muscle tension, heart rate, skin temperature, and blood pulse, all these things. And we also measured the flow of energy using a machine that has been developed by the founder of CIHS called the AMI.
This would have vast implications in the treatment of clinical depression, I would think.
Yes, people with depression, even people with Alzheimer's, and also children with ADD. We have another study that is going on right now on blood pressure, how it changed. So we're measuring blood pressure directly, so we're going to confirm this, I'm pretty sure.
If this technology, which is basically free, can relieve pain better than any of the pharmaceuticals that are sold over the counter and that are this huge multi-billion-dollar industry, you can see that there would be a fair amount of commercial jealousy and or competition going on.
But I was not here to pat Dr. Chevalier on the back. I was here to play the devil's advocate, to represent the film critics who lambasted it all as snake oil and New Age nonsense.
And I don't know if this guy is an expert in electricity.
It doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't. I'd like to see his credentials. So this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and I can demonstrate that to you.
Now remember, Dr. Chevalier used to teach electronics and electrical engineering students about electronics and electromagnetism.
Okay, so this person is saying here that alternating electric field present everywhere in the environment. They are radiated from wires even when no current is flowing through them. I can't even begin to imagine how they can come up with such a thing. Here it is. We have a wire that is just plugged in, connected to nothing, okay, and we're going to demonstrate that it emits EMF, okay?
And this is not a particularly sensitive device.
No, this is a device you can find commercially. They're very cheap. And here you go. They do emit EMF. So this person, I'm sorry, but the skeptoid does not know about electromagnetism.
From California, I went to South Florida, where Step Sinatra's father, Dr. Stephen Sinatra, was spending a relaxing morning with another doctor who advocates natural healing, Dr. Joseph Mercola.
We know that vitamin D is just so crucial. The fine point that I think that most people fail to appreciate, though, is that it's not simply swallowing a pill, because it's kind of like the allopathic approach, the allopathic paradigm, in that, you know, there's a pill for everything. Well, we never did swallow our ancestors never swallowed vitamin D pills. They got it by exposing a significant portion of their skin to sun, you know, in the non-winter months, unless you live in a subtropical environment.
As I listened, I thought about a man that has carried the torch for the native communities, that always knew what nature could do in giving one their life back, whether it was physical, mental, or spiritual.
I met Clint about 10 years ago. I was at a conference in California, and we were sort of in a trailer looking at what we call forward medial dilatation, you know, basically endothelial cell dysfunction using a blood pressure cuff. And I met this cowboy, and basically he's talking about grounding. And as a cardiologist, I got to tell you, I resonated with it because the heart's an electrical organ.
What Dr. Sinatra and Dr. Mercola find as outstanding healing modalities is exactly what saved Dr. Sinatra's son Step from certain death. And I was there to be a witness. allopathic medicine has built to protect larger interests, and because of suppressed information, many people go to their graves far too early. Dr. Koniver and I had lots to talk about concerning this, and I was already late for that appointment. When it comes right down to it, most of what it takes to maintain your health is free in the form of grounding. All one needs is awareness.
Most of us have this.
What do we do in a place then like this? This is what we live in. What do we do?
Well, I think that there's a way for us to accept modern technology and in our society as it is, and also still make the time to touch Mother Earth and find ways to connect with her, even with this all around us. I mean, we're still living on the Earth, so there's still ways to touch her, connect with her. And I don't think it has to be that we live that way constantly. I think it could be that we take the effort to do that every day, even if we're not living directly off her.
Her homeschooling continued, and now I too was one of her students.
There's so much sacred geometry in the human body. I mean, our human body is full of sacred geometry. So in your ear, the way you pick up sound is through a sacred spiral that's right next to your brain. In the eye, first of all, the shape of the eye is what?
Circle, obviously.
Circle, yes. So here we have a sensory organ, your eye, that's designed to pick up on what you're seeing. And the back of it is called the retina. And there's rod and cone cells there. And wait till you see what they look like up close. Here's what see these now? They're
Right.
like, some are pointy and some are like sticks. Well, they're called that because of this, a rod and a cone. And if you were to look up close, look at what it really is. It's these discs stacked on each other beautifully and repetitively, and with a geometry to them.
Oh my goodness,
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's the back of your retina, and that's what picks up on light.
Dr. Stephen Sinatra has never stopped his pioneering research into earthing. Working closely with colleague Clint Ober, they continue to break down barriers in conventional medicine that separates patients from real recovery and freedom. And so, today I was on hand to document a first-time experiment, which, if it would work, would make history in medical circles. But if it failed, would leave Dr. Sinatra embarrassed at best and confused at worst. It was an introduction of grounding to a diabetic patient whose retina would be photographed before and after only 2 hours of grounding. If even the slightest change could be observed after that time, it would be groundbreaking news and unequivocal as to what's possible if Mother Earth is given a chance to be heard. Dr. Sinatra placed a grounding patch on the bottom of both the patient's feet and on both palms of his hands. The earth would do the rest.
You're grounded.
Doctor, how much more time do we have before we test this patient?
About 20 minutes or so.
Okay, and what are we going to see, hopefully?
So the purpose of this test, and the reason why we do it as retina specialists, it's called a fluorescein angiogram. Fluorescein is a vegetable-based dye, and we inject it into a patient's a vein through an IV, and it circulates through the heart and up to the head and into the eye. And we can actually document the blood flow in the eye, in the retina in particular. So the retina is the photographic film of the eye. It's no thicker than tissue paper, and it's attached to the inner wall of the back of the eye. And coursing through the retina are very fine blood vessels. And so, say for example, patients with high blood pressure or diabetes or macular degeneration, we monitored the blood flow in the back of the eye by doing this test.
3,000 angiograms, so I'm used to reading, you know,
Yeah.
angiograms in the heart. But when I see something like this, you see this branch coming off here, and it's really lit up over here, and this little branch here.
Yeah.
I mean, and
could that be a difference?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that improved blood flow?
It could be, Steve. Yeah.
I mean,
there. And even off this
li-
tributary too.
Yeah, you
If
see that tributary? You can't see it here, and you
Yeah.
see a beautiful tributary there. I mean, that's,
that looks like, you're right. I didn't
that
look at
increased blood flow to the retina?
I was concentrating on the macula.
On the macula, yeah.
Because that's the game in vision. The macula actually looks better perfused post grounding. I would tell you that's pretty neat, because usually when we see a distortion of the foveal avascular zone like this in diabetics, it gets progressively larger. You never see it shrink. That's what caught my attention right away.
And the fact that these vessels are lighting up more, in other words, can you assume if you do have better perfusion of the retina, could there be, under microscopic conditions, better perfusion of the macula?
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. The change in the foveal avascular zone, or the shrinkage of it, suggests that there's improved perfusion of the macula. That's really what that's about.
And that's what we want.
That's exactly, that's the game.
And even if we had 1% perfusion, that's significant.
That is gigantic for the photoreceptor cells that are affected by that.
And that's only 2 hours of grounding.
Yeah.
Less than 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, suppose we did 12 hours of grounding.
That'd be interesting.
So, doctor, what does this mean for you? Will you do this with more patients?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a very interesting initial observation. It's quite exciting because if we can show, as in all good science, that it's reproducible and we can improve the perfusion, in this instance of a diabetic patient or in other patients, that has huge implications to the health of their eye and actually their health of their whole body.
For the first time, there is even hope for this patient to regain his sight. Dr. Sinatra can also see significant differences between horses that are grounded. The obvious golden ratio in nature is an emphasized homeschool lesson for Dr. Koniver's children, because it ties in the subjects of mathematics and science and health and even social studies all into one tight curl. It is a symbol of life, intelligence, unity, beauty, and hope. The more I thought about it, our architecture, our corporate logos, our engineering feats, even our ventures into space is based upon this power of interconnectedness. Laura and her children were now at the home of Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell also sees the power that grounding can render, and sees that power from a unique perspective.
We wanted to point out the hand controller, and this is the hand controller I used on Apollo 14 to land on the moon.
Does this road look okay? Yeah, that's a good size. There you go. Beautiful, baby.
Oh.
Okay, will you come up and be a part of this? Will you sit over here?
Oh. So how many interviews have you had in your life?
I have no idea. They've run into the thousands, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
Every few days I have a different interview.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy. I don't.
Yes, you're a good girl.
2 years ago, Laura's daughter Clara gifted Dr. Mitchell with grounding resources to improve his own health. So in some ways, this was an update and a reunion.
What was the most surprising thing you learned from standing on the moon?
Well, I don't know that there were any great surprises because we had practiced and trained. Everything was a result of training. Then setting up the science station out in front with a lot of equipment that we set up that then broadcast data back to Earth for 14 years. And yes, we have been visited by alien life forms, and the evidence is overwhelming that the extraterrestrials have been coming here for perhaps centuries. In our lifetime, the famous Roswell incident was the beginning of the modern era, but the evidence is pretty strong, and I know all of the on a first-name basis have met all of the primary investigators, both in Europe, South America, and the United States, that are the experts in that area. Why the powers that be are covering it up, are trying to keep it hidden, have tried to keep it hidden, but I suspect it is power and control.
Did what Edgar speak of have anything to do with grounding? A century ago, if one suggested a human would walk on the moon, it would have been thought of as sheer lunacy. Yet, after several failed attempts, Edgar is only one of 12 people to ever walk upon the surface of an alien world. I see this as a metaphor for earthing or grounding, and what it suggests as a new healthcare modality. Edgar embraces grounding wholeheartedly. Why? Is it based on something else that he knows?
Do you see math equations in the universe?
Well, I don't see them. We know we've created a lot of math equations to describe the movement in the universe and where things are with respect to each other.
These are petrochemicals, formaldehydes, fragrance, toxic preservatives, just to name a few. And there's also many that won't appear on a label. They're just byproducts of the manufacturing process that are residues that are going to be in that product that will not appear on a label because it's not an official ingredient. In my opinion, it's like, why take the risk? I think innately we know that these chemicals should not be present in our bloodstream. We're a living study right now. We don't know the health impacts of these toxic chemicals and how they interplay with each other and how our bodies are dealing with them. So the sooner we understand that life is interconnected and cyclical and our health is intricately tied to this planet, the better. We're excited about everything that's going on, and without further ado, Dr. Laura.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it so much. So let me tell you a little bit about how I transitioned from living disconnected to the earth and not knowing I was disconnected to really embracing how it feels to start earthing and to making a conscious choice to earth. I had my daughter, and she's the one who taught me about earthing, really. Clara, sitting right there in the front, and she came into my life and changed me in a million ways, but one of the ways is that she had colic. That was a life changer because she cried constantly. The only time she's not crying is when she's nursing, basically, and we're pacing around. And eventually I start pacing outside. And I lived in Arizona at the time, so I never wore shoes because it was warm year-round. So I'm pacing outside in the front yard with my little baby girl, and every time I do this, she stops crying. Every time. So I finally, dawning on me through sleep deprivation, that this is the only way to get her to stop crying. So every day we just go outside and we just walk, and I sing to her and we walk. And she almost always goes to sleep or something. And I'm thinking, what? And then I realized sometimes I would have my shoes on and it wouldn't work, right? I would go outside and my daughter would be crying and red, and I'd have my shoes on and I'd be like, why isn't this working? It's not that. I'm barefoot and she's on my skin, on my chest, and her skin's touching my skin and I'm grounded to the earth. And that's the difference. So I didn't have a label for it, but I knew, hey, whatever this is really helping instantaneously with pain. I'm stepping outside and I'm holding her, and nobody's telling her you should be feeling better now. Her autonomic nervous system is having an instant response to the fact that it's not inflamed anymore. Her body is neutralized and the inflammation is decreasing, and I could see that relief and I could feel it in her. So that's how I started getting the concept of earthing.
All we have to do is touch it, and we're grounded.
We are providing the earthing resources to various cancer patients across the United States to help them with hopefully whatever it is that ails them the most. And the feedback that we have gotten has been pretty amazing. A lot of pain relief. We have patients that have said that it's relieving their headaches.
I've been seeing patients for 17 years specializing in autoimmune diseases. Started using earthing, grounding.
Okay, so approximately what percentage of your patients have a positive result with grounding resources or being grounded to the earth?
Easily 85 to 90%.
Step Sinatra and his father are dedicated to updating healthcare. They believe it will improve the economy and open doors that up till now have been closed and locked. I was born near Hinckley, Minnesota, and here is where both my parents have not only experienced the effects of grounding, but have shared it with everyone that will listen.
Oh, I'm looking at my picture. Okie doke. Here we got the hunting picture.
Elsie, how old are you?
I just turned 98 the 17th of February.
Have you lived close to nature your whole life?
All my life.
What did you do in your life? I mean, you pick berries, what do you?
I did everything that an ordinary citizen does in their lifetime.
When my parents introduced earthing to the neighbor girl that survived being pinned by a tractor tire on her face, the result she had closed the door on anyone else's doubts within her family about what grounding can do. First, it was her mother, and then it was her sister. I hadn't been in Minnesota for 2 years, and there were a few people missing. I knew where to find them. Did they die before their time? Probably so. It made me think deeply about what matters. Seeing my family name made me realize that I want to make every moment count before it's gone forever.
We live in a toxic age. I mean, there's toxicity all around us. There's seen forces, there's unseen forces, and the unseen forces are worse than the seen. So what we're doing right now, we're taking in the energy of the earth, we're balancing, we're connecting. That's it. We're connecting with the earth. That's what we need. That's what everybody needs.
That's what I really want.
So tell me a little bit about what you guys are working on.
Well, we're gonna go to a retirement home, and we're gonna be giving these grounding sheets, which I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but these blankets have these stripes in it, and it's connected to this wire. And see this little plug? You can put it in the outlet. This will help connect through the outlet through the grounding system in the house.
when you're outside and you just feel connected to nature, and it's actually healing for your body. Sometimes I can't go outside, I'm working on the computer or I'm inside. So I can do this. This will plug in and connect me to the earth outside and be supportive of my health. And people use these and they sleep with them. And if you, for hours, sleep with it or have it on your lap while you're watching TV or reading, then studies have shown in your blood and in your joints and all through your body that pain is decreased and you sleep better and that kind of thing. It's nothing to do with the electricity, you're putting it in the grounding port right there. Like the individual anecdotal evidence because that shows me what's possible. Because if something happens to even one person, then I know it's possible for me. Even if it doesn't happen to anybody else, I have unlimited possibility. But if something happens and it's true for that human being, and there's that story and that truth, then I know that that's possible for anybody.
So the epiphany was this, in that a split second after that, I said, well, wow, if I created that, then I can create my wildest dreams.
You know, and this is something that I keep telling people over and over again. Disease, cancer, whatever kind of disease it is a construct of how you live your life and what you think about. And,
yes.
And like in the old Edward G. Robinson gangster movies, when he says, I made you and I can break you. That's exactly, it's exactly what you're telling us. You're telling us, I made this circumstance, I made this bad situation, I can unmake it and make the most wild, fantastic future that there is.
Howard's mother, Charlotte Gerson, whose father, Dr. Max Gerson, went down in history as a visionary in medicine. He was curing cancer almost 100 years ago now. At that time, no one listened to him either.
The grounding is not very different from the Gerson therapy. Grounding is relatively free of charge. The Gerson therapy is relatively inexpensive because we're using natural materials and they can't patent them, so they are against it because they can't make a lot of money on it.
Howard Straus is an MIT graduate in physics and wanted to show me a math equation that manifests itself in a design. Perhaps visual proof of math's expression in nature. The door was open, and as I stepped in, a flood of memories came back to me. The past 2 years have gone by quickly, and it was a wake-up call as to what I had witnessed.
Get naked, and I felt better.
Anecdotal evidence doesn't prove anything.
I really like the individual anecdotal evidence because then I know that that's possible for anybody.
The greatest discovery of all time was what we're doing now, was earthing. There is an intelligence that is beyond us. Anything is possible.
That's a miracle.
math equations in the universe.
We created a lot of math equations to describe the movement in the universe and where things are with respect to each other.
If there is a message at all about earthing, it really is about our connection with nature, with the planet, with the universe.
Horseshit. I haven't read these studies that you're asking about.
What is the result of
these scientific studies?
As in all good science, reproducible, in this instance of a diabetic patient. Nature is everywhere.
What I know of earthing is that it's one of a huge number of
made-up New Age claims.
I can't say I've heard anyone say they have a health benefit.
The skeptoid does not know.
Human cavity resonance.
7.83 hertz.
That is the heartbeat of the Earth made visible for the first time in history.
We need to be connected with the Earth which gave us birth. If we don't have air for more than 3 or 4 minutes, we're dead. If you don't have clean water, you're sick. And the same with the Earth that gives us our food, the sun that gives us the energy in our bodies, and the other creatures around the planet that make the planet habitable for us. If we don't see that that is the bottom line for our well-being and happiness, then we're toast.
What Howard saw in the mathematical sequence discovered by Benoit Mandelbrot is something considered to be one of the greatest mathematical revelations of all time. Computers did not create this never-ending design. They revealed it. Does it carry a message? They say that in all the snowflakes that have ever fallen, that no two are exactly alike. We are snowflakes. There are billions of us, but we are all unique, made with infinite perfection. And if we embrace each other, coming together with a shared sustainable purpose, born in love, the power of that can move mountains. Nothing can stop it. Anything is possible. I think now, more than ever, I'm ready for spring.